Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the Vernie Karen Snake Charmer 2 little 410 shotgun. Mine, however, is very sick. It doesn't work. I only got 35 bucks in the whole thing though, but everything seems to work good. I've got it's got a little release lever here on the front. Break over, obviously open, no, it's unloaded. And if you were to cock the hammer, pull the trigger, everything seems to work good except for one thing. There's no firing pin. When we come back, we're going to try and take this apart and fix this for $0. Stay tuned. All right, here we go. So what do you have? We've got a stainless steel receiver on this little 410, and it kind of looks like an angry beaver or maybe some kind of rabid dog has been chewing on this. Somebody has apparently tried to do some work on this before, and that's probably why I got this for $35, because the firing pin is broken or missing. But there has been some major chewing on here, somebody trying to get this apart. There are some pins in the side here. There's two here and one here. And the pins from the diagram, and I'll put a picture of the diagram in here right now, okay? You can see on the diagram that the pins are smooth on one side and they have a knurl on the opposite side. So notice here on my little rifle or my shotgun I have here that this pin is recessed quite a bit, and I think that's because someone has put this pin in backwards. The knurl is actually on this side, but there are some witness marks on the other side where the knurl was biting into the part there. Now I think I can clean this all up with a little file, a little steel wool, maybe a little emery cloth, and kind of slick this back since it's just a little kind of brushed stainless steel finish. And when we get through, we'll try and get this back to looking new again. But I think what we'll do is we'll go out in the garage here and get us a little hammer and a little drift and see if we can knock these pins out. The instructions say that this easily disassembles by pulling this screw out here and then taking the forestock off, actually taking this little screw out here with an Allen wrench, which doesn't seem very easy. You're just out camping and you just happen to have a full tool set on you, but whatever. This takes apart with a penny, and once you take this apart, you should be able to take the fore end off of the shotgun. So I think the first thing I'll do is I'll go out in the garage, I'll get me a drift, and let's see if we can't take these pins out of here and see if we can take this apart. All right, here we go. Step one. Let's remove the forearm and the barrel from the action here. So we'll start off, we'll take this little Allen screw out down here on the bottom. I've got a little Allen fitting that fits in there. It's got one little bevel-headed socket head cap screw there. And then the forearm just simply lifts away. And this is just a little molded nylon stock. There's no springs, no nothing on them. It's very common on these for these little ears here to break off. And I think you can still order most of these parts on somewhere like Numrich gun parts. Although I haven't read very good reviews on them, but I haven't personally used them, so I'll decline from passing judgment there. But make up your own mind there. So once that's removed, the only other thing is we've got to remove this one little screw here, and it is actually like I have a Remington 410 shotgun, and it will actually uncouple here. But this screw actually goes through a hole, so you have to remove the screw. So let's just let's get this guy out of here. Okay. And you can use instructions on this that came from the factory say just use a dime or a penny to remove this. But anyway, there's the little short stubby little screw that holds that on. Once that's off, and the barrel simply lifts away, and that's it. That's why they say this is a neat little backpack gun, because then you can put these two parts in your backpack. It doesn't take up much, and you've got a neat little camp gun there to carry with you. You got to carry tools with you too, but you know. So next, the thing is, we want to take all this apart here. I think I can do this. I don't know. There's only 3 screws holding the butt on. And so I think we'll go ahead and take these 3 screws out here and remove that, and then we'll have the action all by himself, and we can knock these 3 pins out, and then that's when the fun happens. That's when springs and ball bearings and washers and all kinds of stuff fall out of there, and we see if we can get it all fit back together. Hang on a second, I got to get another tool. All right, so next I used my handy dandy screwdriver, and I took out 3 screws, 2 here and 1 back here, and note that the long one goes in the rear. The 2 short ones in the front, they're the same length. So if you just stick your finger in the back here in the where the extra shells can go, this just comes apart in 2 halves. Again, this one's full of spider webs, but other than that, just a little plastic molded plate just slips on there. It's held on by this little nut here, which is kind of free floating in the receiver. So it turns out I probably didn't need to take that off because it doesn't look like this does anything, but I did anyway. Looks like this can be tightened maybe from inside once this apart. So the next thing I want to do is I want to drop the trigger group out of here, and I think I'm going to do that by knocking these pins out. Again, there's 1, 2, 3 small pins, and then 1 big pin up here at the top, and again mine I believe is in backwards. I believe all of the knurls should be on the side with the safety over here. This one is, in mine, somebody's taking this out. The knurl is actually on the other side. But I'm going to see if I can get that out. And I think I'm going to try and do that with, I've got some old ratty drill bits that you know, have a nice, smooth, rounded back on them. And that way I can put it on there and tap that out without damaging the pin. It fits about the right size. I'm going to see if I can knock these out without having any damage, and when I get that out, I'll turn you back on. All right, so I went out in the garage, I did a little digging around, and I found my little drift, and I have my little brass hammer here, and by striking these pins on the back side, it's important to recognize which side the knurl is on, because you want to drive the knurl out. I've driven all 4 pins out. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have no idea what happens when we take them out, so I'm going to learn with y'all. Here we go. Take this top one out, which I can see a hole down through there behind the firing pin. It looks like it holds the firing pin in. That may be why the firing pin is just completely missing. Take that one out. Nothing happens. Now you know what? I may not have to take any of the rest of this apart, because it looks like this top pin is the one that holds the firing pin in, and that looks like what's missing. Looks like the firing pin slides in and then is retained by a little spring in there, and all of that is gone from here. But I don't know, we'll pull the other ones out and see what happens. We may not ever be able to get this back together, but let's see what happens here. Okay, I'm going to tap these out. Okay. So there's one. And that definitely was holding the first one here was holding the hammer in, and a little spring apparently, and so that's all popped out. Lord have mercy, I hope I can get this back together. I'm just going to leave it kind of partially in there. Tap this one out, see what happens. I have a feeling one of these is holding the trigger in. So that second one, the one on the bottom, goes through a little hole in your trigger and holds that in. Okay, so far I have the top one removed, which I believe the top one holds the firing pin in, which is in this little rifle, or the shotgun rather, completely missing. With all these pins out, I will be able to take this and on my little buffing wheel, clean this up, get the stainless slicked back up. So that's one good reason to take this apart at least. Okay, I'll go ahead and pull these the rest of the way out here in a minute. And the last one here in the front, the safety is held in. I can feel a spring in here on the safety. Feels like the safety has a bar that goes through some flats on it, and as it runs around, it's clicking on maybe a flat spring in there. And let's tap this last one out and see what happens here. This guy right here. There it comes. So there's the last pin out, which holds the breakover mechanism here in the front of the trigger guard. That's what's holding that in. So if I wiggle that around, I believe I can get that out as well. Looks like the trigger group is held in by two very small pins down here at the bottom. If I take those two small pins, I should be able to take the trigger guard and the rest of the parts off, and then I believe we have a fully disassembled unit here. Okay, so I'm back. Couple things. Number one, I told you before that this was stainless steel. This is not actually stainless steel. It has some rust on it. It is some kind of a marine grade coating they put on these parts. The other thing is I was going to cut this firing pin on the lathe. There it is. But I found one on Gunbroker. A guy had a few extra parts and he had one of these on there for 20 bucks, and so I just bought one. They're really hard to, now looking at it, it looks like, you know, it's some pretty fine micro manufacturing there. So I think it's good to go ahead and just use an original part. It was totally missing. I think I have all the parts now. I did make a little spring that fits over the firing pin. It was missing as well. It didn't come with the kit, but we just made a little spring. And I think it's going to work. So what I'm going to do now is, without you looking at all the painful details, I'm going to at least get this fitted back together, not everything seated. One thing I did do is I made a little tool, which is just a little pin, a little part of a nail actually. And what I did was I made that so that I could put the trigger and the trigger guard back together, however that goes, right? And then I can put this pin through there temporarily, and then I can compress the spring, and then with another pin push this little pin that I made out. So I'll cut back on when I get to that step, and let's see if we can put this business back together just like it came apart. So hang on, let's see what I got. All right, so step one of the reassembly is I put the buttstock back together. 2 short screws, 1 long screw. And the reason I did this first is because there's a screw that holds the buttstock on there. And really the only way to access that screw is down through here. And if the trigger is on, it will be in the way. And so this is the only way I could, you know, really tighten that screw up. So now it's good and tight. I think that should be your step one. Next step, we put in the, I say we, I mean I, put in the breakover mechanism here, which was just inserting this back down, cup side forward, and reinstalling the pin that was right in front of the safety. Now I'm not going to put any of these all the way down until I get finished. I'll seat all these pins at the very end. So that's all I have done so far is stuck that in there. The next thing I'm going to do is drop the hammer in, okay? And the hammer, the hammer drops in. I'm doing it upside down, okay? So I'm going to drop the hammer in this way, and then I'm going to put this little spring. The spring goes, the loop goes around the back side of the hammer, and then I can line up the hole in the loop with the hole in the hammer, and then these legs here, these spring legs, will go towards the buttstock. So this will go in, whoop, just like that, and then I'll put that pin back through there. All right, so I got my hammer dropped back in. I got my little spring. You can see the little ears on the spring pointed back this way. they're loose. There's nothing really nothing tight. As I get the pressure off the hammer, all that drops down in there. So I've got my breakover. The only thing left to do is put the trigger group back in, and this pin right here is going to go through the trigger. So I have, like I said, a temporary pin made. So once I drop my trigger in there, I'll be able to push this pin and it'll push my temporary pin out. And then I'm going to finish up by just putting these two pins, one here in the front, one in the back in, and then all my pins should be back in. Once I'm ensure everything works smoothly, I'll tap all the pins home and we'll be done. All right, gang, as you can see, I have all the pieces back together. I've got my little trigger group back in. My hammer's sticking out there. I can see the end of the firing pin. And then I have all my pins sort of through there, but not seated all the way. Check the function here. The hammer sets, trigger pulls, and just for funsies, let's see if we put our finger in front of the firing pin, if we can feel it. Ow! Yes, we can. That ought to go off. All right, so next step, I'm going to go ahead and drive these pins in the rest of the way, seat them back where they were originally, and then we'll put the front end back together. We should be ready to go shoot a snake. All right, so there you go. It takes quite a bit of tapping force to get these pins reseated, but I was thinking to have everything back where it goes. It functions, the safety even works. You know, what more could you ask for here? Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is put the front end back together, which should be pretty straightforward. Should be just putting the barrel back on, putting this one big screw back in. Okay, put a little screw driver on there. I'm not going to over tighten that right now, especially with this screwdriver, because it's not the correct screwdriver. I need one a little bit bigger, but I don't want to overdo it anyway. There we go, it locks up. Does the breakover work? No. Yes, it does. Oh, it works good. Okay. Everything seems to be working good, back like it was. Put the stock back on it, which is just a matter of putting this piece of plastic and this one little screw back in. Come on, little screw. There it goes. And there you go. The 410 snake charmer is back in action. Let's go out and shoot it and make sure it works. We'll be looking for a snake. Hang on. All right, we're back out at the range. We're going to shoot a 410 shotgun. We found a nest of exotic snakes. We're going to see if it works. So I found an old 410 shell in my truck. Let's give it a try. Uh-oh. Safety works. It works.